Hi, welcome back to Susie Reads, and we are going to read today Chapter 2 of Witches, Ghosts and Goblins. And today we get to find out about Miranda's mysterious castle. Are you ready to come read with me? Excellent. Let's begin. This is Miranda's mysterious castle. Once upon a time, many hundreds of years ago, it belonged to a king who was very cruel to the people whom he ruled. And at last they drove him out of his castle. The people locked the doors and shuttered the windows and never went back to the place that reminded them of unhappy times. Years later, Miranda found the deserted castle quite by accident when something went wrong with her broomstick and she was forced to make a hasty landing. The people round about say that parts of the castle are haunted by ghosts and goblins. This may be, but in it, Miranda has an apartment quite snug and her own drawbridge and a deep moat where she keeps her pet goldfish. Miranda Witch turned to the two passengers riding behind her on the broomstick. "Hold tight, honeys," she warned. "We've arrived at Miranda's mysterious castle. It's time to descend." To Polly and Oliver Hannon, it seemed more like falling than descending. Oliver clutched at Miranda's sash. Polly tightened her grip on Oliver. They swooped downward through the blackness and fog and the rustle of bats. "Prepare to land," yelled Miranda. "But you never told us how," Oliver shouted. "Feet down, knees bent slightly to take the jolt," Miranda instructed. "But there won't be much of a thump. The grass around the castle is soft as feathers. And what's more," a tremendous splash cut off the rest of her words. "Bother!" Miranda muttered. "We landed in the moat instead of on the lawn. That's the third time this week." "I can't swim," gasped Polly. "Then float. Anyone can float in a moat." The water was quite warm, and to Polly and Oliver's surprise, floating was every bit as easy as flying had been. "Something keeps brushing against me," Polly said in an uncertain voice. "Goldfish," exclaimed Miranda. "The king who used to own the castle kept alligators in the moat. Horrid man. I think goldfish are much nicer, don't you? That's why I have to keep the water heated. Goldfish chill easily, you know." She paddled a bit with her broomstick. "Now, hang on to me," she said to the children. "I'll guide you to the secret stairs and we'll be out of here in a twink." As they floated on their backs, Polly and Oliver gazed at the castle towering above them. Against the black sky, the gray stone looked cold and forbidding. Some of the windows were barred with iron. A swirl of bats suddenly spun out from an open turret window, and something like a shriek came from the shadows of a great archway that marked the castle's entrance. "Crazy old place, isn't it?" remarked Miranda. "Folks say it's haunted." With her broomstick, she pushed aside some vines on the side of the moat. "Well, here are the steps," she exclaimed, as though she was quite surprised to find them there. At the tops of the steps was a small green door. Miranda produced a large key from her owl-shaped bag, which was now half filled with water. "This is my apartment." She pushed open the door. "Please come in." "We're awfully drippy," said Oliver, taking a goldfish from his pocket and pitching it back into the moat. "Our wet feet will make tracks," Polly warned. "Nonsense," said Miranda. "Let's see what a little magic can do." Presto! A fire began burning brightly in the fireplace that a minute before had been cold and dark. Snappo! Soft candlelight now cleared the gloom. Zingo! Both Polly and Oliver found themselves holding a cup of hot chocolate. "Little tricks like that I can do without any trouble," said Miranda, "but finding my dear Cactus is quite beyond me." "You're sure she isn't somewhere here in the castle?" asked Polly. "Of course I'm sure. Cactus always comes home for meals, always. And now she's been gone 9 long, lonely days. A tear glistened on Miranda's wrinkled cheek. Oliver, who had exceptionally keen hearing, put his finger to his lips. Shh, be quiet, he said. I think I hear something. There are many sounds, snapped Polly. She often grew tired of Oliver forever telling her to be quiet. From far below, she seemed to hear now and then the clanks of chains. Somewhere a shutter was banging, or was someone pounding at the castle gates? Outside, the wind moaned and groaned. Or did the moans and groans come from inside the castle? Polly shuddered. Perhaps it had been a mistake for them to leave their nice, comfortable home and come with Miranda to search for Cactus. Once again, Oliver put his finger to his lips. He seemed to be listening to a very special sound. Then Miranda and Polly heard it too. Ever so faintly, between the clanks, the bangs, the moans, came a faraway sound that was very much like a meow. It must be Cactus! Miranda jumped to her feet, overturning the footstool on which she had been sitting. Oliver kept listening, although to do so was very hard. What with Miranda making such a dither of opening and closing doors and drawers and shoving and tugging at furniture and loudly commanding Cactus to appear immediately. I think, Oliver whispered, that the sound is coming from inside the wall, close to the fireplace. Everyone tiptoed to that side of the room. Polly cupped her left hand to her ear. She held it against the wall and listened. So did Oliver. So did Miranda. They all nodded to each other. Oliver was right. The mewing was much plainer. It seemed to be coming from the wall itself. Now Polly, who had read many stories about castles long ago, suddenly remembered something important. She motioned to Miranda and Oliver to come away from the wall, to keep from being overheard. Lots of castles and have secret closets and hidden passageways. Suppose someone or something is keeping Cactus prisoner in such a place nearby. Or maybe, Oliver added, Cactus got in there by mistake and she can't get out. All witches and their cats have enemies, Miranda informed them. We must proceed with great care. They moved close to the fireplace. Very quietly, they started searching for something that might open a secret door. Miranda looked for a magic knob to twist or turn. Oliver looked for a hidden button to press. It was Polly, though, who discovered the secret, carefully pushing on each and every stone of the fireplace. She had reached the 7th stone from the bottom, which was also the 7th stone from left to right. Then, lo and behold, the entire corner of the fireplace swung open. Behind the hidden door was a small room, where standing on a chair by the wall that separated him from Miranda's living room was a tiny creature, scarcely 2 feet tall. Polly and Oliver stared at him in wonder. From tip to toe, he was dressed all in brown. His face looked like a small round moon, and his ears, rather large for such a little head, were pointed at the top until they almost resembled horns. There was no chance for the little creature to see them because his eyes were closed. Perhaps better to hear himself. From his mouth came a series of beautifully cat-like meow. Imp! Shouted the witch so loudly that the little figure almost toppled from the chair. Miranda rushed towards him, but in a trice he recovered himself and made an astonishing leap to a hanging lamp well out of her reach. How could you be so mean? Miranda's voice shook with anger. Mewing like Cactus and making me believe that my cat was here. I was only teasing, the brownie replied. Brownies have to play tricks, you know. Besides, you shouldn't have left me when you went looking for Cactus. He swung back and forth on the hanging lamp and pointed rudely at the children. Who are they? My friends, Polly and Oliver Hannon. They have promised to help me find Cactus. Polly and Oliver smiled politely, but the imp stuck out his tongue at them. Send them home! Send them home! He shrilled. Earth children never see half the things that are before their very eyes. They can't find anything. We found you, Polly said. And we'll find Cactus, Oliver added. We'll all search together, declared Miranda. And you will help, she told Imp, or I'll banish you from the castle. She shook her finger sternly at him as they closed the secret door and left him sulking. He's jealous, the witch explained to Polly and Oliver. He has a terrible, terrible temper, but he can be very helpful. Tomorrow, he'll guide us to the land of the goblins. Perhaps they can help us. Now, everyone to bed. Miranda smiled in her sleep. She was dreaming that Cactus had returned and was lapping up her third bowl of milk. Oliver tossed and turned. In his dream, the broomstick he was learning to fly snorted and kicked like a bucking bronco. Polly was awake. She stared at the cobwebs over her bed and wondered if the imp could really be trusted. And how did one get to the land of the goblins? Home seemed very terribly far away. She sighed and slept. And that is the end of chapter 2. Next week, we will read chapter 3 and all about the land of the goblins and their caves filled with rubies and emeralds and diamonds. I'm so excited. We'll read that next time. See you then.